recording. Today, I'm going to teach on a new concept called the guilt cycle matrix. Now, I'm going to teach from this whiteboard today. Now, I meet men in two places. Now, they're either stuck in the guilt cycle of feeling guilty for something they did or something that was done to them. And this means they're here. Now, usually when we feel guilty, we feel some type of shame, and then we start to blame. We start to blame our wives, we start to blame our ex-wives, sometimes we blame our kids, etc., etc. And then we go back to feeling guilty, and it just starts the fucking cycle all over again. It's not a fun place to be. However, guilt can do one of two things. It can either further shift us into shame and blame, and then we just get sucked into this rigmarole, because guess what? We just start complaining, and we start shaming, and we start sharing our guilt with all of our guy friends that suddenly tell us all the bullshit. Yeah, she's a bitch. You can do better. Fuck those friends. Those friends don't love you as much as the friends like me and the individuals that will tell you what you need to hear. Now, when you're feeling guilty, this can also bridge you to ownership. Okay? Now, from guilt to ownership creates responsibility and creates freedom and leads to conviction. Now, when we're stuck in that guilt cycle and we're not taking any ownership and we're just stuck there blaming and shaming, I can't work with those guys. Truly, I can't. And it's not to say I won't. Trust me, I've tried. But to these guys that are stuck in the guilt cycle, I'm offensive as fuck because they feel like I'm singling them out, right? Now, guys that are taking ownership, that are taking responsibility and understand, like, guys, I take full responsibility over the failure of my last relationship. I take full responsibility. That does not mean that I take ownership over everything that went wrong that were not tied to me. There's a difference. Responsibility leads to freedom. Sorry equals fault. Does that make sense? I was chatting with my partner the other day, and she writes me this message, and she's like, I'm so sorry that this happened. And I responded and I said, hey, I really appreciate the apology. However, I believe it's you take responsibility over this happening. Here's why. Sorry equals fault. And it's not your fault that this happened. But I take responsibility equals freedom. You can take responsibility over something and it leads to ownership, right? Now, I share this with you because commonly when we're stuck in the guilt cycle, the guilt matrix over here, we just say sorry for everything. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry I'm breathing. I'm sorry I'm talking too much. Right? How many times have we fucking been there? Like, it drives me insane when I meet with a man and he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. And I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. Don't apologize to me. Like, because that profusely apologizing means you're stuck here. I see right through it. Whenever I meet with a guy, and I empathize for you guys. You know, I truly do. This shit isn't easy. Whether you have clarity on the adventure you're going down, or if you're still in that place of limbo, here is not where transformation happens. So I'm going to give you an action step. If you're feeling guilty, step one, over what? What are you feeling guilty for? Okay, clarify that. What am I feeling guilty for? Top down, write down the top three things. It's the first day I've had no bandage on my finger. It's so crazy, like being able to make a fist. And I'm still like figuring out how I feel about having another hand again. But write down what you're guilty for, what you feel guilty for, what you feel shameful about, and what you're blaming, right? I always love this one. Guys like, oh, I don't have time because my kids. Don't blame your kids. Ever. That's not fair to them. Your kids are your responsibility, but you can't put the blame on them for not having enough time to do something that's truly important to you. So don't blame the kids. Like, I get it. We're dads. We have responsibilities. But don't use them as the reason that you can't show up when it's just your lack of persistence, because it's just going to continue in the guilt cycle. So what are you feeling guilty for? What are you feeling shameful about? And what do you continuously try to blame that really you could be taking ownership over? Now, we have an exercise called taking ownership. And in dating mastery, actually I'm like finishing dating mastery right now. So for any of the guys that are in like the dating phase, dating mastery is being finished right now. And man, it's part of my greatest piece of work. It's literally what supported me and Mark in finding like our picture perfect partners. Like, I know that my partner that I have is the woman of my dreams from my dreams. Like, I dreamt her up. And then I wrote out specifically through these exercises what she looked like, what type of career she was in, what she was into, what we might disagree on. Now, in that, with clarity comes conviction. And that's ultimately what we all want to get to. But if we can't take ownership, we have no responsibility and we have no freedom. And if you have no freedom, you are consistently going to be a slave to your mind. And your mind can be either your biggest prison or your greatest asset. You get to choose. But if we're stuck in here, no growth comes from there. No growth comes from being guilty. Sure, there's some heavy emotions that are yours to process. But if we're not ready to take responsibility of like what actually went wrong, then we're not ready to have true freedom. Because true freedom means we're convicted, right? And if we don't have conviction, we just shift back into the guilt cycle. And guys, if you're still feeling a sense of guilt or shame, maybe there's something you haven't let go of. So go through this. What are you feeling guilty over? What are you feeling shameful about? And what do you consistently put the blame towards? And then pair that or parlay into, what can I take ownership over? What can I take responsibility for? And what do I have conviction in what I'm actually sharing? Hope this is all making sense. I'm excited for this, for the guilt cycle, because realistically, this is a new framework that I'm going to take a stance on and how to support guys in the now that they're in and getting them to the where that they desire to be. Because ideally, a guy that's just guilty and just is miserable, I can't work with because I'm offensive. Like, I've said that time and time again. These guys feel I'm picking on them. These are also the guys that hit the fucking she button. Yeah, this is my new she button. I got a new one because my ex stole my other she button. This is literally one of the things that she took was the fucking she button, because I remember she hated this thing. And it's not like I would ever like, hey, yo, you're my problem. I would never say that. But it was funny. Like, this was one of the petty things that she stole. I was like, my fucking she button? Like, damn, I'll get a new one. But in this, when we're hitting the she, like, when a guy's like, man, she always does this and she never does this and she. It drives me insane, because that shows me this. We're blaming. We could call this the she matrix. If you're stuck in the she matrix, you're probably not willing to hit the me button. I wish I had a blue me button and a red she button. I'm going to get a blue button that has the word me on it. Because when we hit the me button, we take the onus onto our own shoulders, right? If we're so focused on she and her and what she's doing and what she hasn't done, we're not even focused on the one person that matters, which is the man in the mirror staring right back at you. Truly. That's like what the gimmick is. We're so focused on her and the dogma. And if you have clarity, if you have clarity and you've started the new adventure, because I know I've got Tyson on here right now. Right now, the she button may look like the difference in conflict or the conflict or indifferences in parenting at times. And guys, I'm not here to tell you that co-parenting is meant to be easy. Trust me, I get it. It's challenging. And those are the times where you actually start to see like the polarizing differences in who you really are. Like, I know I saw that. I know, Tyson, you're nodding your head. Like, I see that so much. And man, it makes me so passionate about like some of the younger men that I'm working with, because I'm like, yo, clarify parenting values first. Like, talk about that shit. It's not too soon. Like, I truly wish, well, I don't wish this. I take responsibility over the opportunity that life has voted me because I've been very blessed. Right now, my desire is to pour into young men and my son in the way that I wasn't poured into. See how I reframed that thought in the moment? I noticed it was going to be a negative thought, and I don't like that, because a part of taking ownership, having responsibility, and being free, having freedom, is owning every aspect of my life, which means I can't control the way my ex co-parents. I can't control her lack. I can't control anything she does, but I can control me, and I can take ownership and responsibility over me with conviction. And that's why I have freedom. That's why I feel great in the now that I am in, although it doesn't look the way I thought it was going to look. Right? But that conviction comes on the coattail of ownership. I'm like driving this home and harping on this so much because I believe as men, we have this innate opportunity to create long-term change, starting with us. Like, starting with us. Truly, women crave leadership. Anyone that tells you indifferent is probably not a leader. Anyone that tells you that a woman does not want to be led and cared for and secured and provided for in a way that fits probably has never had a healthy dynamic. Now, I'm not here to hate on the empowered woman at all, but I do believe that there's a difference between feminism and the empowered movement and the empowered woman. There's a difference between it. And I'm not here to expand on that. I will another time, or chat with me on a one-to-one call and I'll bring it up. But guys, if you have no leadership or ownership in your own life, it's probably because you're not taking responsibility over what's truly yours to take responsibility over. Like, I know this. I'll break this down simply. If I look in the mirror and I don't like the way that I look, whose responsibility is that? Mine. Like, I can't expect my partner to be like, oh, you should have pushed me to go to the gym. I told you I wanted to go to the gym more. I had a guy complain to me about that shit the other day. He's like, man, my wife and I, we were supposed to start working out together. And man, she didn't wake me up to go to the gym. And I was like, are you her fucking child, bro? Is it her job to wake you up and say, good morning? No. Wake up like a fucking man, set a fucking alarm, and get up. You should be the one waking her up, if anything. Man, it frustrates me. Because if you don't like the way you look in the mirror, that's your responsibility. If you don't like the way your relationship looks, guess what? That's also your responsibility. If you don't like the dynamic you have with your children, that's your responsibility. If you don't like the career that you're in, that's your responsibility. Basically, everything's your responsibility. And the moment you think it's not, is probably the moment your life starts to get really challenging and daunting in ways that you don't desire. Like, I know when I'll probably ruffle some feathers with this. If I'm just going with the flow and letting what happens, that tells me you have a lack of leadership and conviction in the direction you're going. And no woman should jump into bed with you. Truly. Like, I was chatting with my younger cousin. She's 20 years old. She's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. She lives out here in San Diego. She's got a full ride to UCSD. She's going to be a doctor in 5 years. Fuck yeah. And I'm chatting with her. She's like, oh, I'm talking to this guy now. And I'm not like the rest of my family who's like, oh, you're talking to a guy? Let's fucking kill him. Right? I'm the oldest by like 14 years. So I'm the oldest like exponentially. And so the rest of my family demonizes her for dating certain types of men. However, I challenge them and I say, Why do you think she desires these types of men? Like, that's the real question. You guys impressioning in the way that you are is causing her to desire these type of men. Motherfuckers. I don't say that to them because they're younger and they can't handle that. But when she's chatting with me, I'll never come and be like, no, this guy sounds like he's fucking horrible. Don't date him. Otherwise, you're disowned. Like the whole rest of my family does. Instead, I reaffirmed to her, hey, I know that you've been nurtured and raised in such a way that I can trust the decisions that you make. However, if you're asking for my input here, I can share with you. She said, yeah, I'd like your input. He tells me like he just wants to go with the flow and like kind of see where things go. I said, sounds like what 20-year-old guys say. And I said, well, my true thoughts is his lack of conviction and leadership isn't your responsibility. He doesn't truly know what he wants. And so he just wants to play the game with you. And you're nice and you have some attraction towards him because he's a good looking guy. However, his lack of conviction and certainty with you and for you isn't your responsibility. The same thing can be said like in our relationships, whether you're dating or whether you're really clarifying what that looks like. Take some ownership, right? For her, I said, look, you get to take ownership over the fact that a part of you is attracted to this man. Ask yourself, like, why? What attracts you to him with conviction? What attracts you to him? And I said, I'm not asking you to tell me, but what I'm hearing is a lack of leadership from him. And that means that on the other end, you were going to have to show up that much more to lead the relationship in the direction that you want it to go. Does that make sense, guys? The moment we don't have leadership in a relationship, the woman naturally has to step into that. That's why a lot of guys lose their power. They lose the keys to their kingdom because their wife has to show up in such a way. Or their girlfriend. Man, my partner knows with complete conviction, I've got my shit. And when I don't, I share with her in an empathetic way what I need. Because if I blame her, I just feel guilty and then I just feel shameful. And that's what little boys do. Realistically, ownership is that path of most allowance, guys. Now, that's all I got on this training.